My name is Khan. I am the founder of a company called Haystack. We are a Y Combinator company, and what we do is we create observability for your engineering organization. What that means is we analyze your GitHub, Jira, all those data, and then we put it into a graph showing these changes that you did in your organization, these process changes. This is how they impacted. Nowadays, majority of the impacts are tracked via or are more around AI. So we do have a bunch of things around that as well. So that's very basically what I do. On top of that, I'm also building a bunch of side projects and other things on the side, from an agency to different types of tooling. And these were all available because of AI. It gave so much more opportunity, so I could actually expand a bit more what I do. I'll stop here, Demi.
Yeah, you can just continue with your presentation or whatever you prepped.
Okay, mine is more like a talk, and then I will most likely do a Q&A, so showcase, screen share, that type of a thing, rather than presentation directly. I think that will be a much better state. The very, very high level of AI that I want to explain is, a lot of people say AI it doesn't work, or it's very good. That's like the typical reaction that people have. So what I want to show you is, let me go into this one. So a very basic person would have an agent's MD, an engineer. And typically the agent's MD will tell what this project is about and basic information. But the more you improve, typically the agent's MD explains other bits. This is a simple project, but you will see it actually doesn't explain what the project is. It explains what to use. Use this one, this specific CLI for API documentation. Use this specific thing to test front-end stuff. Use these specific tooling to get access to your Redis, your Postgres, whatever, your Stripe, and be able to test it. These are all teaching the AI what to use. You don't tell the AI what to do at the moment. You're just telling AI what to use. So that's the tooling part. The moment AI can have access to more tooling, it can do double checks, triple checks much more easier, and then you gain a bit more speed. Then the next step that comes is you need to tell what to do. So the AI needs to make decisions. I will explain the folder structure a bit more, but let me just show like a basic one over here. This is an example of an architecture. I'm using it here, but if you want, I can show it in a proper Visual Studio Code as well. But very high level, what is the architecture? It explains the architecture, but it's not in the context, not an agent's MD if you realize. It's a different file. I'll show another one which might be more interested, projects MD. It says you need to use this when you have high-level purpose of repository, introducing new to someone, or aligning project goals. So this is a very interesting one. These types of things teach you, I call it docs, but it can be called skills or anything else. It teaches you how to train, how to make decisions for the AI. So if you're going to implement, let's say, a feature, do you know if this feature is actually going to fit to your work, to your repository? You need to teach that. If you don't tell the directions that the AI needs to go, then it won't be able to do it. So in this case, for example, the project direction, it goes into certain different levels, right? These are the specific places that the project can evolve. If it's somewhere else, it doesn't do it. So when you ask agent to do vibe coding, right, you just say, implement this. It can go multiple different paths, and you got rid of like 6 paths, and then it goes into like these 2 paths, which are what the paths that you want to go. The more of these tools you add, skills, docs, whatever you want to call it, you're decreasing the potential path that the AI can properly. These needs to be built. Serena, you have a question?
Yes. I think this is one of the things that I think about a lot. And actually, I think this is actually a very good idea, because I think sometimes we're always worried that there's so much in the context window that it slows things down. So just to confirm, because I really like the read when, I'm assuming what it'll do is go through the different MD docs, and then it go through file 1, reads the first doc and says read when, and if it doesn't satisfy the criteria that you've put in, it'll move to the next one. And then blah, blah, yes, go down, and then if no rate, then it'll go next one. So that way it has a really clear set on which MD docs to utilize and which ones not to. Is that correct?
Correct. I will answer your question in like 5 minutes in a much better way.
Perfect, thank you.
You have a question?
So my question is, how do you debug this? Like as your organization expands and as you create more tooling, the tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger. How do you know what like branch AI is walking down from a debugging point of view to make sure it's following your instructions correctly?
Good question. The answer is every time you see a different branch appearing, you say, update this doc, add this to HSMD, and then that specific branch is dismissed. But you need to do it constantly, and everyone in the team.
But I guess my question is, how do we know the thought process it got to get to that point? Or do you just ask it to fix itself every time? I guess is
great question. You don't know, you will never know, is the answer. The only way to validate is you ask, you give a prompt, right? Implement me this specific feature. What you want is you go, drink a tea, come back, the feature is done. That's the ideal case. You go, you come back, it was mostly correct, but it did one thing wrong. It used a different style. It used a different convention. It implemented the feature in a different style guide than what you're actually doing. Whatever the requirement there is, it did it slightly differently. You're like, this is wrong. Update the docs, get rid of that specific branch, delete everything, rerun it.
All right, so there's no way to debug like the nodes it went through and how it got to its endpoint. You kind of just need to figure out the output is not what I wanted. Please correct it.
Exactly. You kind of need to go through that. It's the way that I would phrase it is, imagine you have an intern. The intern, you're saying, implement this feature. Can you see where the intern is going to think on the way and then which branch it can go? You won't be able to. But after the intern implements it, you're like in the code review process or whatever review process you have, you will say, hey, you did this wrong. Don't do it again. So it's in the memory of that person. The same thing is true for AI. After you see the result, put it into the context or make it visible to the context somehow so that it doesn't happen again. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that answers my question. But then my next one is, I mean, we've all worked in repos that is just messy spaghetti code of stuff everywhere. How do you prevent your instructions from bloating too much that there's a bunch of conflicting instructions?
Great question. I will get into, yours is slightly different than Serena's, but it's still context management. I will get into context management and then tackle that as well.
Okay, cool.
In context management, the main problem people have is, or the main problem AIs have is more or less two different topics. One of them is how do I manage the context? And the other one is is the result actually good enough, which is the capability of the model. You don't have enough, control over the capability, but you do have a bit capability, I'll tell that. You have more control over the context. So you have to manage the context yourself. That's your job at the moment. Eventually, it will be done by the models because they'll be so good, they will be able to manage it much better. But currently, it's a job that we need to do. The other part, which is, can the AI actually get the job done? Get the job done has actually two branches. One of them is the AI model is good. So use always the flagship one. People say, I make it cheaper, use like a cheaper model. No. The very basic principle is the more tokens you use, the better the outcomes. Use more tokens. That's the very rough thing. Use the tokens using the best model as well, so it can actually infer in a much better way. Nowadays, the models are very, very good that a lot of things can actually be done compared to earlier AI into 2024 and 2023. It's very, very good nowadays. So use as much as tokens and implement necessary processes as well. What do I mean by processes? There are basically 5 different things that an AI, or 4 to 5 different things that the AI needs to do. And if the process doesn't exist in the tooling you use, you have to implement that. I will get to this part, then I'll explain the context part, which Serena's question is. Regarding how AI works. If you give AI a workflow, they will do it better. The workflow is the AI needs to plan the tasks. If you give a big thing, it needs to divide into smaller things. Does it do this? Are you using Cloud Code, Codex, Pi, or any kind of system? It automatically does it. But sometimes you don't use it, right? Maybe you're using as an API or something. You have to build the planning yourself. You have to build the skill yourself. Skills is teach the AI your specific preference to get this done. There's so many ways to get a job done, but your specific way is called a skill. So you have to implement those. Another one is verification. If there's no QA flow in your AI's workflow, it will not do it properly. Typically, Codex, Cloud Code have that embedded inside coding use cases. But if you have a non-coding use case that you want the AI to use, you should have some kind of a checklist guardrail so that you guide the AI correctly. These are not context management. These are specifically how does the AI get this job done. I'll give an example of this. Let me open a example tool. So in my case, I have lots of tools. I constantly explore tools with, let me see which one is a good one. Is this a good one? Which project are you seeing right now? It's
Agents, rules.
Okay. This one probably. Okay. Let me open a different one. This one I'll explain it in a bit. I need to open that specific project. Can you see my screen? I believe that's a yes, right? Nobody said no. Perfect. So there's a lot of coding use cases, but there's non-coding use cases. This is specific for non-coding use cases. I create a lot of new domains. I handle DNS, emails, SPF, and all of those like random things. They're very annoying. Anybody who has done managing DNS stuff, it's very annoying. It's not coding. You don't go do coding. You go to a website, whatever your DNS providers, and then change some stuff, right? So I created a skill. This whole repository is basically a skill, how to get something done. And in a lot of these, there's like principles, but there's like a bunch of things that it does. But in the end, can you see there's guardrails? These are the main things that I say. Use this. Every state requires approval first, for example. Treat mail requires high-risk production changes. These are guardrails. There are better guardrails that I do have, but this is an example. Another one is checklists. After everything is done, it goes through a checklist of these items. And when it does the work, it effectively does a QA. So you have a QA person looking at your work. It says, oh, does it have these specific things? It does a check mark. So when you tell the AI, I don't know, in this case, it's a domain one, right? Create me a new domain, link it to all my things. It will go and then check every single, what do you call it? In this case, whatever these records are, and then make sure that they're correct after it has done it. This helps the way that the AI works significantly. So that's why I say you need to make sure that you have the correct tooling, the correct harness, infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, for AI to complete a work. But then you have to manage the context. And I will now show that part, and then I will do another QA session in between. Can you see my screen? Perfect. So the way that you manage context is you have an agents MD. What agents MD, very, very high level, is it's a system prompt, if you know what the definition of system prompt is. Everything is automatically loaded. Then everything after you give to AI is a prompt. So it can or might not read. You want to make sure the main, most important things are in agents MD, and the rest can be divided into different places. So what I decided to do is I'm using Codex and Cloud Code together. Codex uses something called Cloud MD. Codex is agents MD. It's the same thing, doesn't matter. So I created a new repository called agent rules. In my original, what do you call, Cloud MD, it says, go read this repository. In my Codex agents MD, go read this repository. That's like literally the only thing that it says. And then they both come, whichever one I open, it will read this doc. Then in this doc, it tells, who am I? Where do I work? Where's all my files are? How do I handle docs? Which tools do I have? Yeah, these are CLI tools. Which are my processes? And so on. There's a bunch of different things. These are loaded to every single session that I load, and it's 100 lines. It's not that many. I wouldn't recommend making your agents MD 200 lines. The main thing that's important here is like a bunch of things that it introduces, but I have this docs workflow. What it does is I have this specific script, docs catalog, and I force the AI to call docs catalog every single time I open the session. Then what happens is this specific script will fetch everything inside. Then inside the docs folder, there's typically, let me show you an example. There is read run blocks. It will parse this part. For let's say I have 20 docs inside a single repository. It will go to that folder, that repository, read every single read run, put it into the context. So suddenly my context got richer. I have like, I don't know, 3 to 5 lines of read run for every single doc I have. So I added 50 more information into the context. I didn't put the agent's MD, I put it inside a script. The script injected that context. This is important. I automized context ingestion. So now the agent can figure out what to do. Then from there, it says, I want to read this specific context, and it will read the whole file. It didn't have to read 20 different files. It had to read 3 different files. And from that motion, you can actually manage context much better. And I'll do an example, actually. It might be clear. In the meantime, if anyone has questions, I can answer while I set that up.
Up to how many docs will this system work? Because if you have, like, let's say 1 million docs, that it doesn't work, right?
So I'm going to give a good question. From my experience, I didn't have any issues up to 100 docs. I didn't try more, but my biggest project had 100 docs. Yes, Jeff?
And you mentioned something about a script that creates the context for you. Do you mean it just like reads the file and only knows when to ingest it? Or you specifically, there's a script in there that condenses it all together?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that right now. So codex, okay. So I opened 2 different sessions. One of them is in the file root. The other one is in the file, this specific repository. This is my blog. It's the most easiest way. Write me a blog post about colonists being a great game, right? This is my prompt. I'll put it into 2 different places. So we'll see how they will both perform. I'm checking local agents MD. So it just read that one. It explores it. And then it starts writing it. It did absolutely nothing, right? Then this one, it went and then read voice MD. It did a printf, tried to figure out the agent's MD. It did a list. It did a docs catalog script. Remember what I said? It read this many lines, whatever that many lines is. From there, it understands how to write a blog post. It gets an example of a blog post. Then it gave me 4 inputs on how should I write this blog post. This is a specific blog post writing skill that I have. If I actually to show you. So if I look here, you will see blog writing, right? This blog writing skill has its own MD file, has references, scripts, assets. So this one, if I run it in the same correct repository, it was able to get all that context, everything, and did the correct action. Whereas this one just wrote a very bad blog immediately. Context management. In one of them, I managed it in such a way that I called it in the correct place, and my scripts did all the work. So suddenly, I'm significantly more productive. I don't have to constantly copy paste or do anything. AI figured out that it needs to read this specific blog to learn how I'm writing and then format it accordingly. That's like a very smart thing that AI can do. I don't have to say, go read these 3 things and then update it constantly and do copy paste. This is what I'm talking about automation. The very, very easy way to think about this is if you have like an axe and you're constantly sharpening it, then cutting a tree will be significantly easier. And AI made that next level. If you have built tools internally to improve whatever workflow you have, I showed you 2 workflows. One of them is blog writing. The other one is DNS automation. But I have for ads, I have for SEO, I have for coding, I have for a bunch of different use cases. Everything that I do that I know I'm going to do more than 2 times, I create a skill, I update my workflow, I made sure that my axe is very sharp. The first time I do it, it's slow. The second time I do it, I do a couple updates. Third time, it's very fast. And that's like how you slowly get better and better at AI usage. Yes, Serena?
As you're building out your tree, how do you ensure that there's no overlap? So I've got 2 questions. So like one of the things that I'm worried about as the context window gets more, I don't know if the word is blurred, how do you ensure like part 1 versus part 1000 are very different and they're all collectively different enough and you're not doing either 1, duplication, or 2, missing out gaps in between that? And how do you then figure that out when your tree gets bigger over time?
So my tree does get very big. So my biggest tree, I will show it. What's the best way to show it? Let me show you. Okay, I found a good project to showcase your question. This one. Can you see another Visual Studio Code? So this is my SEO skill. My SEO skill, this one probably has around 100 different MD files. Just that single job. Very basically, if I have to put it, Do I have anything here that's important? No. Okay, let me show you this. This one does it slightly differently than everything else that I do. This one, I have different agents. So I have a specific agent that's called a SEO Analyze Architect. This is an agent. I create a completely new agent with completely empty context. It has certain abilities, like it does site assessment, pipeline configuration, constraints, etc. I have a lead that does a bunch of different things. I have a blog fetcher that does a bunch of different things. And if I added this all as docs, they fail. The reason of this is the context that you require to do the SEO job is probably 10 to 100 times more than any other workflow as a context. So let me go step one, take it one step back. Let's say you want to have like an automation. Currently, I have like an automation to find a house. I'm trying to buy a house, so it goes and searches houses. How much context do I need? It needs to check all the new houses that's upcoming, 50 plus houses in the area that I'm looking per day, right? That's not a lot of context. If I'm doing something like DNS, what's the context in it? Like, I don't know. There's a bunch of context, but it's not that much. If I'm trying to do, let's say, a linear issue analyzer or data analyzer context, it's still not that much. You think data analyzer is using a lot of context, but it's actually fetching a lot of data. And then does an analysis. The MD file is very short because the fetching part is actually the major context is there. What uses a lot of context? Coding. You have to ingest all of the code base. So how do you do that? Codex and Cloud Code handle that. The models are trained for it. You don't have to work on it. It's kind of comes free nowadays. We don't have to build it, but that's like a very big context. SEO, you have to have a lot of context because you have to digest so much information about your website. Hundreds of blog posts, thousands of blog posts. It will get lost somewhere and it will forget to do what's happening. The same thing is true for if you do any legal work. I worked with some legal clients. They have thousands of PDF files for a single case. If I try to put that much data, it just fails. Like it can't manage. So I divided the context into agents. This is the only time that you need agents as separate workflow. You know, sometimes you see I have a code review agent, I have a backend. You don't need them. Though specific use case, the context is already handled by the models. Sometimes you will see a person will have, I have a, I don't know, an outbound agent, and I have a Twitter post agent. You don't need those. Just put a doc, go read the doc, learn that skill. Twitter posting is, I don't know, a few files, MD file. It's the same thing is true for the other use case. But the moment you go into extreme complexity, SEO is actually extreme complexity example, you have to refresh your context. So every single agent here has a refresh context and they only do a certain amount. And this is designed in such a way that there is a lead whose only effort is to manage all the agents underneath, and it will pump up new agents every time it sees something. Gets the result, pump it up again. I will show you how the communication happens, and I'll show you how I manage. These are all different MD files to actually get this done. Where's hand off protocol? Okay. So, for example, when a data is collected, the collector person, the collector goes into, let's say, your competitor's websites, your website, and then goes to Google Analytics, Ahrefs, all these different places, and returns one JSON file to the lead. The lead will decide, is this complete or do I need to do it again? And then rerun the whole thing. And now it's completer, another thing. And then there's like a bunch of different agents and each one of them are communicating to the lead and the lead is making a decision. So lead has very little context and just project managing, but everybody else has like that deep information context and they're able to do their job very effectively. One of the other parts about this is the context management. Remember I said system prompt versus user prompt? The example that I gave you with like, if you have a Twitter post writing skill or like a doc, whatever you want, that's a user prompt because the doc is read afterwards. But if it's agents MD, it's a system prompt. But I designed these specific agents all as system prompts. So everything that they are written here, they will never forget. It's a system prompt. It's the most important thing. It's the, what do you call it? The multiplier that the models give to system prompt is a bit higher than normal prompts. That's why it actually is a bit more secure to put stuff there. Jeff, you have a question?
Yeah, if we were to go back to the example where you were in the command line, like the terminal where you showed it running in one window and one in the other, what were the differences under the hood? Like I didn't quite understand why one knew to go pull all these things and one did not. Like, what was the difference between just being in a different folder? I guess is my question.
Good question. I'll go back. This is not important. So the main difference is one of them is run inside a root directory. The other one is run inside my blog directory. And in my agents MD, if I go back into the agents MD, let me show you that one as well. It's this one. Okay. You're seeing agents MD, right? In here, I have this specific workflow. So the root one, what it does is it tries to run docs catalog, but there is no docs folder. It tries to read agents MD. There is no agents MD.
I understood. It could still access agents MD. Okay, got it.
But the moment I force it to read it, because agents MD is already forced, it will go there, reads the agents MD, runs docs catalog script, inject all of the information, and then can do everything else afterwards.
Okay, and what is docs catalog? Can you show what that is?
Yes, it's a script that I wrote here. It effectively, basically what it does is it takes this top dashed metadata, it scripts it gets the read when part, and then puts these two lines into the context. That's what it does.
Okay, I see. So it runs that script. It then parses your entire repo, grabs all the doc files, and then grabs the go deeper to learn this.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. I know, Mohammed, I think you're on the call. You kind of said agents can kind of identify when they should read a skill now. How much overlap is that with what Khan is presenting now?
Let me rephrase the question so I understand correctly. What's the difference between skills versus docs?
So Mohammed shared last week or a few weeks ago, I think he's on the call now, he's a team member at Colonist, and he said agents are now getting smart enough to know when to read an instruction file versus not. So I'm wondering how much overlap there is with what agents are currently doing versus the system you created to handle that.
The agent needs to know what exists. In a code base, there is thousands of different subfiles. An agent doesn't know each one. What it knows is if I do a grep or some type of a search, get me the file list, and then from there, it does a filtering, obviously, and then these look similar. So a very basic example of that I can give is, let's say, I'll give an example of domain. If you say, I want to create a new domain, right? The agent will actually search domain, DNS, website, HTTP, HTTPS in their grab commands. This is the smart agent. Because it figures out DNS means domain and they're really related, right? Maybe it searches TLD. They know that it's related to the work, and they will fetch those specific files and then assume those are the files. Where does this not work? It works in coding. The main reason is coding agents are significantly better trained. The models are trained well, so you don't have to teach everything yourself using these extra contexts. It's actually embedded inside their neural network, more or less, or their matrices. But if you go into, let's say, you use Notion or GitHub issues or something like Jira for your internal policies, right? The company policies. There's typically thousands of files there. One of them is, this is our quarterly goal. I don't know, this is our hiring process. This is our one-on-ones. This is our blah, blah. This is our marketing channels. There's so many different docs. If you try to make the agent find something in Notion, in Jira, or in Dropbox, whatever where you're putting, the greps fail because they don't know what to do. They will try to search the term quarterly report, but they will not use QBS, for example, quarterly business report, and so on. So it will miss certain ways that you're speaking, and it won't be able to find it. The benefit of what I'm saying is you force the agent to get the context you want it to know. That's the important part. And the forcing gets rid of the sometimesness. And if you know big companies like, what was the company called, the biggest one? No, I forgot the name of it, but any doc retrieval company, they're trying to build business document retrieval. You ask the AI and it will fetch from all these different sources, GitHub, Jira, Notion, Linear, everything, and then give an answer. These companies fail. They cannot make the AI consistently give an answer to you because there is no way to ingest thousands or tens of thousands of docs, and the AI can find the relevant parts without missing some. And the moment it misses one, it doesn't work anymore. You cannot trust that tool. It has to succeed. If you search, where's my quarterly reports, and it doesn't give you, then you assume it doesn't exist, right? Suddenly your whole business is like, if you extrapolate that to all the search questions, your business is under risk. You cannot trust that tool. This is very common for those types of tooling. They try vector databases. They try all kinds of different information structures, RAGs. None of them worked on that scale. So extreme scale, it doesn't work. Non-coding use cases plus extreme scale doesn't work. That's a better way. Coding use case to extreme scale somehow works. That's like the magic of codecs and like these big models. But except for coding use cases, they don't work. You need specialized tooling, but I don't know if they will actually be able to do it across organizations. Did that answer the question? Mohammed, I think this is your question.
Yeah, what I was referring to for skill is, well, the way that I understood skills is it's a YAML file, and then the things that you see at the top, wrapping the name and the description are the front matter. And then every time you ask a question, it will go through the skill files and see if that applies to what you're asking, and then read the rest of it. So I'm not too sure about this reads when and summary. All I know is, well, this is the structure I read online on how to make skills, but all they have is a name and description. And if those follow, then it will read the rest of it.
I will tell you the reason why I have my own system versus not. Skills are only working for Codex or Cloud Code. So if you're using Codex and you have Cloud Code skills, Codex doesn't know Cloud Code skills exist. It won't be able to search it. So you have to build, if you're using both tools at the same time, which I'm actually using OpenClaw and a few more AI agents at the same time, because I'm using so many agents. And I know that every 2 to 3 weeks or like 2 to 3 months, one of them will be better and I'll swap. I create a system that I don't have to swap my system. If they swap, my system can support everything. And go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a similar system that I implemented where we add all of our skill files to a single folder. And then we then add like a small bit of context into like the CloudMD, or let's say so we use Cursor and Cloud Code primarily, and we have like a single line in each of them that tells it to reference the skill files in that single folder. So our skills are shared across any IDE that you prefer. But yeah, I had the same problem that you had, but yeah.
Perfect. One improvement that I would suggest is if you have it as a loose suggestion is it's not in the system prompts, all the context, but you're injecting the context afterwards. There is a likelihood that it will miss or not inject certain context. I don't know why. I don't know what the decision process, but it misses. So to avoid missing, I would make it programmatically. Instead of saying, go read skills and then get everything, I would make it called this script. It will inject everything and then you have it done. Because it can do a single command much easier than saying, okay, I read this one, I read this one, I read this one, and then like after 50, not 50, but after like 10 to 20, it will probably start to miss a few of those skills. And you'll be like, why is the response different? It didn't use it. You'll have those types of questions. So getting rid of them is use the script, and then suddenly all the context is done. That's a hacky way to inject a lot of context without the AI failing.
Okay, and when you say to inject it, because you have the sentence and the skill to go and read from this folder, you're saying that it won't always read from the folder. But like, what would injecting do that this sentence doesn't do? So
very high level, if I go like one step high, what is 100% in context? It's system prompt, that's agents MD, nothing else. Multi-layer agents MD is okay, but nothing else is in the context. Everything else you have to add it afterwards. The best case scenario is you make a dynamic agents MD. What I mean by that is a dynamic, there's literally a for loop that goes into the skills folder that gets all the metadata, name and the description of every single skill that you have in that folder, puts it into some kind of a structure, whatever, and then updates the agents MD. So every single time you run, your agent actually has a single context. This is what I do with the SEO tool, by the way. The SEO tool, because every agent has their own system prompt in an MD file, some of them actually have like, what do you call, dynamic versions. So this, I can actually inject skills systematically and consistently. The consistently word is important. This is the best method. If you cannot do automation, which is very hard to do with Cloud Code and Codex, because you can't, the agents MD is like a static file. It's not designed to be coded, right? You have to find hacks. So now you go to this user prompt and say, go and then fetch these things and then put it into context. It's or it might not do. So because now you're in the risky stage, you're trying to improve the chances that it will do. Even my system that I showed with docs catalog, if I do it probably 100 times, it will run docs catalog 95% of the time. 5% of the time, it will ignore it. And I don't know why, but it will. It's literally in there in the system prompt, but it will not call it. And I know it because it will say docs is red or docs is not red. And I sometimes see, but 90 to 95% is the hit rate that I have with the current setup that I have. If you want more, you have to put into system prompt.
Yeah, I also notice sometimes that you'll have a prompt in like a skill or something to execute a certain command or stop at a certain point and confirm with the user.
Mhm.
And maybe like 10% of the time it won't stop for some reason. I think that's similar to what you're explaining. But yeah, I need to consider a higher like level of automation so it actually always reads our skill files instead of praying it does. But yeah, thank you.
If you want, I would suggest the best way to inject skills. I will show you. Where is it? Okay. Oh, I did the wrong one. Sorry. Let's go back. This one. Jeff, I will give you just in a bit. Okay. Can you see hooks.json that I have? Oh, this is too close. Can you see this?
Yes.
Perfect. So Cloud and Codex have certain hooks, and these hooks are very helpful. This is one of the ways that I add context injection and also certain processes. For example, every single it does a read or write after post tool, it goes and says validate summary. So it confirms if the summary structure is the structure that I want. This one does front matter. This one does validate commit, hooks, blah, blah, state updater, security filter. You can see there's like so many different hooks that I have implemented. In certain cases, I stop the agent, for example, if it doesn't work. So you can see like there's a bunch of different methods. Post compact is another one that's very important that I can get if you're curious about. But these hooks are important because hooks allow you to have consistency. That's the important part. Most of the time, the issues that you have with agents is it's not consistent. It sometimes does it. If you have hooks, it always does it because the hooks will guarantee that script is running and there's some other information that's happening. The only problem with this hook structure is I have seen currently there's two problems. I open an issue for the first one where Codex doesn't have pre-start hook. So when you wrote like Codex in your terminal or wherever you're setting up that session, I cannot force it to go read and do the docs catalog script run. It doesn't have it. So that's why I have it there. But if I was using only Cloud Code, I would put it into that specific hook and it will guarantee that it will always run. So that's another thing to note. Hooks are very, very powerful, especially if you want consistency across a lot of different use cases. You can actually enforce them.
This is more of like, I guess, a personal preference question, but it seems like you organize most of your agents based on repo and task you want to complete. So it seems like you have multiple repos for the different tasks you want to assign. Do you have like a master one that they all kind of point back to with some like generic rules you follow, or do you always tailor them specifically in one repo for the specific subtask?
I only have a master agents MD report that you saw where docs catalog. My name is Khan. This is where all my code lives. This is where my blog lives. This is where my ops related stuff lives. That document is my master document where the main agents MD and Cloud MD links. Afterwards, I don't have any other master one. Immediately, I run it inside that specific repository. It goes into the specific repository agents MD and then runs docs catalog and
All right. So your main agents.md, for example, says run docs catalog, but then you need to be in that folder and each folder has its own docs catalog. So when it gets to that step, it gets a unique output at that point.
Exactly. And I do have certain, not consistency is not correct, but non-standardization that it's a bit hard to fix. I can give an example. Every single repository that I have, they have a changelog and they have a release. The thing is, some of them are code bases. So they're running tests and other bits, pre-hooks, CI. Some of them are just like, I don't know, random, handle SEO, handle DNS stuff, handle go-to-market stuff. They're not related. Or like do house search, right? Personal stuff.
Yep.
Their changelog doesn't require anything like that. So how do I make it consistent across all of them? it requires a lot of effort. Is there a solution? 100% yes. I didn't spend the time, for example, doing those solutions. So now every single repository has their own changelog and release MD, and they figure out themselves instead of having a centralized version. For example, there's like those types of issues that I'm having that I don't have a solution. Actually, I do have thoughts of solutions, but I didn't actually go and implement it. It was just easier to handle the one-off. Right now, I still don't have more than 15 different repositories. Maybe after like 30 plus, I'll be like, this is too much, I'll go and refactor. Refactoring is so cheap nowadays. It's like probably every single refactor for these types of smaller items, I would say, like single thing across 15, 30 different things. It doesn't take more than half an hour to 1 hour to complete everything. So refactor is super cheap. The method that I'm using, I used to do like plan a lot of things and then try to one shot. Nowadays, I'm like, do this, do that at the same time, parallel. And if it doesn't work, refactor it. Or if I realize, oh, I didn't do this properly, refactor. And that is faster than planning because I don't know what to do. I need to see the result to be like, this doesn't feel correct. Like in planning, I don't feel that. But after I implement it, this doesn't feel correct. I just do a refactor. I would argue that my refactor ratio is like maybe 1 to 5. Maybe 1 to 5. Every 4 features, I do a refactor. Whatever the feature is. It might be internal process. It might be like actual features in the code base.
Yeah. And then I also missed, so I understood the importance of hooks, but I missed the part where how do they know to use the hooks? Like what part of it triggers those hooks, I guess?
Hooks are predefined. It's
I see.
Cloud Code's code base. They specifically go check .hooks JSON file.
Okay.
And then it does it. Like you don't have to, like, yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Any other Rob, you have some questions?
Yeah, I had a question about subagents. You showed with your SEO project, you described that it was too complex to have a skill for it, or for one agent. You showed you had a lead agent that was responsible for spinning up and managing other agents. I just want to ask more about your strategy. How do you kind of dictate to a lead agent how to build other agents, when to build them, how to manage them, skill files? Yeah, how do you do it?
My recommendation is don't use this agent complex thing. You have separate agents. By default, ignore that. Imagine that doesn't exist. Try to do everything with skills. You'll be surprised how far you can get. At some point, it doesn't work. And then now you need to do a refactor, and then now you split it up. That's the method that I would go forward. I did a couple more things that I over-engineered. I tried to create like specific agents to do specific tasks, like do a review agent, Sentry agent, blog agent. Like it doesn't matter. An agent is just a blank canvas. You just put a context and then it does it. It's just that a workflow needs to be super complex for you to have multiple agents working together. I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried to make sure that it will be most likely over-engineered if you use multiple agents. So I'm trying to get rid of that use case. And if you feel that it doesn't work and you have to over-engineer, that's the correct call. But you most likely don't need it.
Okay, nice.
Are there any skills in your workflow you find harder to automate compared to like coding SEO optimization or such?
Yes, the hardest ones are very interesting. They have 2 limitations. One of them is putting more tokens doesn't allow you to actually have a good result. There are actually solutions like that. And the other one is you just don't have enough tooling to be able to make the agents work a lot. What I mean by that is, I'll give an example of the first one. I'm trying to make a domain finder. So this is a typical problem. Which domain fits my company, right? You're like, oh, this is colonist, but why is it not Katana or why is it not some other thing? You need to go over maybe 50 different options and then select one specific domain. So this one has 2 problems. I tried to actually make it work and I failed. I have it open source, but it doesn't work properly. It doesn't give the answer that I want. It gives me domains, but none of them are the ones that I want. The 2 blockers are one of them. It doesn't know how to properly find a domain. Like what's the mental model of finding a domain? What's a good domain definition? I tried Paul Graham domain methods. I tried my own custom skills. All of them were wrong. Like they didn't produce good domain names. So I couldn't find how to produce good domain names. The second problem is how do you validate? Again, domain one is a good example, but you'll hit immediately the moment you try to automate your personal workflows. Some tooling does not exist. You literally cannot go in and do it. LinkedIn doesn't have an API. Twitter has an API, but it can, Twitter is like that different, but Reddit does not have an API. Quora does not have an API. Anything social does not have a proper API because they want to avoid bots. If you don't have an API, how do you go and then post without getting blocked? Now, regardless of how much tokens you put, you'll get banned. Doesn't matter. So the tooling is actually the blocker there. DNS is another example. There are rate limits on how much you can query certain domain servers. So because of that, you cannot go and search tens of thousands of different domain names if they're valid or not, if they're available. So the tool is blocking. Another use case that I had around that is lead gen, go to market. We do outbound. So I have automations for outbound. I'm trying to find good, very good ICPs, but every single one of them, I have to pay money to an API provider. And that money is very expensive per lead. So I cannot go and say, get me these 100,000 lists, and then from there, go to LinkedIn, spend the token, and then figure out if they fit my customer segment. I can't do that. I need to do that prior to actually checking. So it's a very hard problem. You cannot do 100,000. You have to go fetch 1,000 and then from there do it, or fetch that 1,000 a bit more strategically so you don't have to check the 100,000, right? It's like a different problem because the cost of the tooling part. And these ones, I am struggling more to complete the workflow. It's still helpful. I still use them. And they're better than not having it, but it doesn't do as much as a coding agent where I'm like, implement this feature, I go get a coffee, come back, and then it's done. It's nothing closer to that experience. It's messy, and I still have to do so much more for those use cases.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, when you mark a skill as it's not possible to get such high quality output for the skill using AI, how much effort do you put into that? Like trying to automate?
Typically half a day, I get annoyed. One day, I cut it off completely. I never spend more than 1 day.
Okay, thank you.
So you mentioned that median developers increase speed by 5x, right? And for people who use AI,
yeah.
How much speed increase did you see yourself?
Good question. Probably it depends on the day. I would say consistently, it's around 10x-ish, I would say. Sometimes it becomes 40x. Sometimes it becomes like 2x, 3x. It never becomes negative. There hasn't been a single day in the past 6 months that I was faster manually compared to using AI. Not a single day. But the main difference that happens is the difference between 5x improvement to 40x improvement is not tooling or using AI better. It is using AI more. What I mean by that is now you're starting to parallelize. So you have all the built-in tooling and everything, you're faster. So that already gets you to 5x. You do it a bit more. You can get around 15x-ish is the productivity that you will see after having a lot of shopping DAX on a single project. Then you cannot improve more because now you write something and you wait. You don't have a choice. You have to wait 1, 2, 3 hours for that feature to complete. And most of the times it's correct. I do go there, check 15 minutes, do QA, everything, whatever, typically 15 to 30 minutes, and then validate. It's typically after that pretty much correct. So one prompt, wait 2 to 3 hours, 30 minutes more work on it. That's a single feature complete for me. But in parallel, I can do 2, 3, 4 of these. So that 15x can become 60x. And sometimes I have bandwidth and my brain is like good that I can actually manage that many things. Sometimes my brain is just like melting because there's so many things going on and I just want to slow it down, and then some stuff I leave it and then focus on the main important bits. It depends on that. The best person that I have seen who was able to do this was able to do 6 to 8 projects in parallel consistently. Mine is consistently around 2 projects. After that, I typically get 2 to 3 is my consistent, not 6 to 8. That's like a more extreme. That's why I don't consider myself a 100x engineer, because I don't have the bandwidth to be able to handle that many parallels.
When you say 2 projects, is it 2 what do you call threads, 2 agents, or 2?
2 different sessions that are unrelated work. So one might be front end, one might be back end, for example. One might be marketing, one might be coding. Whatever the workflow is, it's like different parts of whatever I need to get done. But 2 to 3 is the parallel that I can do. Afterwards, my brain just fries. Jeffrey?
Yeah, my question was on the parallelization. Is it often in different projects, as in like different companies, or do you kick off multiple projects in the same repo? And can you ask 2 features to be implemented at the same time in the same repo and get success?
So my answer is both. I do different companies and same company / project. There is something called work trees. I don't use it. I hate it. It makes my brain worse than anything else. And Git work trees is the term. It is the method that you can work on 2 different features on the same repository without agents conflicting and having confusion. Because it copies literally the folder, literally your code base copies it, makes a new copy, and then 2 agents works on 2 different file systems. So when one thing is updated, the other one doesn't get confused, and then they block each other. I don't use it. I think it's very complex still. It fries my brain more. Instead, what I do is I learn how to design my my repositories, specific repositories and coding my code bases so that they are isolated. I make it so that they're good enough isolated that I can run different parts at the same time. So for example, normally I would have a backend, and a backend does 50 different functionalities. I got rid of that. I said, now there's a decoder, there's an extractor, there's this database thing, and each one of them is a different folder inside my code base. So I'm actually still improving this system, but my code base is now, each folder is more or less isolated workflow, and they only export a certain thing outside the work, outside of their their functionality, and everything else ingests that one. So I don't go and say implement everything. I say these are the sub things that I have. 4 things at the same time. I do all of them. Then one thing goes and then connects all of them to the main thing, and suddenly you parallelize a feature into 4 different features. But to do that, I actually need to separate my code base into different folders and different.
So to clarify, you have this vision of a feature you want to make, but you understand that requires a bit of database work, a bit of front end work, a bit of back end work, and you subdivide that into 3 that run in parallel. That's kind of what you mean.
That's what
do you ever just like try to one shot a feature? You're like, I just want this feature, and then it needs to learn that it needs to attack those 3 submodules.
Always, and it doesn't. Not because AI cannot succeed. I still do it.
Sorry, which one do you do? The one shot, or you subdivide it into 3?
Both of them. I do both.
Okay.
A single one shot touching 3 different parts of the code base is also a very common workflow I have. It depends on the day. It depends on what I'm parallelizing, and if that is the most important thing. So in a lot of cases, for example, I would specifically focus on a single feature, and then I'll go eat and come back. I'm not parallelizing it. Like that's totally okay. I'm eating food right now and it's working. Another case might be I'm working on a blog post at the same time, or I'm like doing some other types of business and working on that specific project. So those are a bit better. But if I want to specifically get a feature done, and typically when it's super complex and more important, I have a deadline or a customer needs it or something like that, I want to make sure that I can do everything at the same time more. So I divide it into a bit better. So parallelization is much more, I can parallelize agents in the same repository without them actually touching each other.
Got it.
Anything else?
I guess that's it. Thank you, Khan, for all the stuff that you shared. And thank you everyone for joining.